Welcome back to MSK Innovations. We have a great event lined up for you all tonight. I'm your host, TJ Halverson. And before we introduce the panel and the presenting companies today, I'd like to thank the sponsor of today's event, the DeAngelis Group, the leading executive search firm in the musculoskeletal industry. And today we have three companies presenting: CustomSurg, Steribite, and GID Bio. On our panel, we have Dr. Paul Slozar, Kevin Rocco, and Chris Lyons. We'll allow each of our panelists here take a quick moment. Please provide a quick introduction. We'll start with you, Dr. Slozar.
Thanks, TJ. It's a pleasure to be back. I really enjoy this event. So my background, practiced orthopedic spine surgery, 28 years in the San Francisco Bay Area, where I did a lot of work with startups in spine. I had the pleasure of being the chief medical officer for Titan Spine for 11 years, which was acquired by Medtronic in 2019. I've continued to work with startups. I now do my own consulting work and have co-founded a venture capital fund aimed at early stage investment opportunities in the healthcare space. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Kevin, quick introduction.
Yeah, great. Thanks, TJ. Great to be here with you all. My name is Kevin Rocco. I'm a partner at Neovate Capital Partners. We're an early stage life science venture fund, think Series A or with a focus in medtech. And a lot of people know me as the former founder and CEO of a company called BioRes. We developed the BioBrace implant for sports medicine, and we sold that to ConMed in 2022.
Yeah, great. Thanks for taking time to be on the panel today. And last but not least, our standing panelist, Chris Lyons. Quick introduction.
Undefeated, 15 months in a row. I love it. And to Paul's point, and of course, Kevin, I know you're going to love it. But yeah, I've been in the industry now 37 years. Half that time was working in marketing and sales capacity roles across both Smith & Nephew and Medtronic Spine. And then the other half of that time has been M&A on the buy side for Medtronic Spine. And since 2017, started my own consulting firm, Southern Metrics, which is focused on sell side business lifecycle management all the way through exit.
Great. Thanks for joining us once again. And before we jump into our first presentation, just a quick note: MSK Innovations, we are not a broker dealer nor an investment advisor. This venue is for informational purposes only and not to be considered investment advice. Conduct your own due diligence before you make any investment. And with that, we'll get started with our first presentation from Valentin Splet at CustomSurg. Valentin, take it away.
Thank you very much. Thanks to all of you. Super impressive panel. And thanks for the opportunity. I'll start sharing my screen, and please let me know if you can see that. Does that work for you?
It's coming in. Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So my name is Valentin Splet. I'm the co-founder and CEO of CustomSurg. CustomSurg is the first FDA-cleared AI app for fracture surgery. I founded it with two long-term friends, one's a surgeon, one's an engineer. We think we have a really compelling future ahead of us in digital trauma for surgeons and patients. And we believe that CustomSurg can actually be the spearhead of a real transformation of the orthopedic trauma space. So those familiar with orthopedic trauma will be a bit bored in the first minute or so, but everybody else, I would like to take on a kind of a thought journey. Imagine we would all be in the same room now, and I had this beautiful vase with me, and before you know it, I would smash it on the floor into many, many pieces. And I would take a tube of super glue and ask you to put it back together, but I would actually switch the light off before you could actually have a look at the pieces. My question is, would you be able to do that? Most people would say, that's pretty much impossible. And yet that's exactly what we ask trauma surgeons to do in the OR every day. I'll show you a quick video of a surgery. If you just had lunch or if you're a bit lightheaded in those things, you may want to look away for about 15 to 20 seconds. But I thought it's important to start with this because this is a tibial plateau fracture. And it consists of about 20 fragments and will be fixed with about 15 screws and 2 plates, and all happens through this one incision. And so it's a really difficult procedure. Many such procedures in trauma. But the crazy piece is not the access or the complexity of that. The crazy piece is that before this surgeon, and this is a very, very well-known surgeon, starts operating, he does not really have a good understanding of number of fragments, fragment shape, fragment location. He does not really know which fragment goes where, and his choice of implant and placement thereof is entirely subjective and based on experience and gut feeling. And so it's really, one could say in many ways, and in many centers, it's really a trial and error procedure in the OR. And the consequence of that is that it's a very difficult procedure that needs very, very long training and specialization, even after residency. The surgeries are long, 2 to 4 hours, and complication rates are often just too high and not acceptable. And surgeons notice, and they get very verbal in the OR. We have a really long, amazing quote of surgeons in the OR. When surgeries don't go according to plan, one of my favorite ones I brought with me today is this: you can't bake a cake out of shit. So my two friends, Thomas, biomedical engineer, PhD at Harris Lab in Boston, worked in the industry and then started the academic track of our project in 2019. And Arvind's a trauma surgeon. He's an associate professor at Harvard Medical School. He's published many books on the topic. He's really a rising key opinion leader. And myself, I have a master's degree in financial economics and a master's degree in applied technology, and I've worked in medtech BD 17 years. I've sold 3 of my previous companies. And so we really decided we want to look at that problem. We really, really want to solve this. So the fundamental question we asked ourselves as a working hypothesis is, what would happen if surgeons would have really the best plan for each patient and each surgery before they cut a patient open? You're welcome to scan this QR code. It's also on the next slide to understand what our FDA-approved product, giving surgeons the best plan, actually looks like. But the solution to this question is now 510(k) cleared for a few weeks, and it turns scans into plans. So using CT imaging, we can, through a number of computational modeling and AI steps, really derive an algorithmic plan that tells the surgeon the real problem about fragments, about displacement, about realignment, and also about implant selection and placement. And the technology behind this was developed at Harvard and ETH Zurich, and it's a blend of computational modeling and AI. But I don't really want to dive too deep into that now. I want to talk about the impact. Because in our first seminal publication, this is based on a case-control cadaver trial, we were able to show that using this algorithmic plan by CustomSurg, we can more than double the stability, and this is statistically significant with just 6 patients. And we can also markedly reduce surgical time. And so Mike Weaver, who is on our advisory board and the chief of orthopedics at the Brigham and Women's Hospital, calls it a revolution in how we plan and execute fracture fixation. And we do believe that the revolution is what this space actually needs, because the demographic development and also the retirement projections of trauma surgeons really show a kind of a future on distress, where in 2050, the number of cases per surgeon is going to double. And so our technology, making the surgery simpler, better, and faster, we think it's really a fundamental base layer of enabled technology that needs to cover the trauma. The business model is built on surgeon engagement. We have really gone the extra mile to build a product surgeons want to use every day. On top of that, we can improve workflows and cost benefit of surgeries for hospitals. But the really interesting part comes when this technology is weaved into existing revenue streams of implant manufacturers. Because trauma is really far behind the digital adoption, we believe just in the trauma space, in the long term, we have an amazing revenue opportunity of up to $1 billion a year. Business model is SaaS, so we're starting with hospitals with a per case fee. But the really interesting part will be when we partner more and more closely with the brand names in orthopedic trauma implants, which many of those we already have existing agreements with. There's competition in this space for sure. Automated or algorithmic surgical planning is a hot topic. The reason why we believe we'll win the race in trauma is because we really focus on complex cases where there's an undisputed, very high clinical need. And the very important thing is that we are building a scan to plan process. We're not giving the surgeon a planning software that they may or may not use. We just take the image and we turn it into a plan. And we think that's exactly what the market needs. Surgeons really don't have time to sit down and plan at a computer. They are asking for an Uber ride and not a rental car. There's a really, really interesting momentum shift going on right now. We just got FDA clearance. We just signed our first sales contracts. We received breakthrough device designation for a specific part of the technology that's going to get clearance next year. We have 5 industry partnerships signed. We have a prospective trial running at Mass General that treated 4 patients last week. We got our patent granted. We have about 5 million total cash funding to date, some dilutive, some non-dilutive, and about 2 million in other benefits. Really amazing clinical data, first successful in human applications, an amazing advisory board, and a strong sales pipeline, just really waiting to be developed further. We're raising 7 million for market entry, expect to close by the end of the year. About a third of that is committed from current investors, and we just opened the convertible round to get that going. And so for any of you that are private investors, this is actually a really great opportunity before we think the future rounds, and also probably the second part of this round, will mostly be only institutionals. What do we expect with this round? So we expect that we really need to do 3 things to be interesting for a strategic. And that's, first of all, we need to show widespread clinical adoption. So our North Star metric really is to get to 1,000 surgeries. The second is we want to expand the product line from complex articular and periprosthetic fractures to really do the bread and butter surgeries that are also outpatient and in the community, because that's really where the volume is. And then finally, on the R&D side, we have some homework to do to get the tech stack and operations ready to treat tens of thousands and eventually hundreds of thousands of patients a day. We do foresee an early exit window in 2028 with a strategic or an up and rising newcomer in orthopedics, or maybe also an imaging company looking at digital twin technology and widening their footprint in the OR. There is a lot of track record of such acquisitions, and we're convinced that the milestones we have after this next round will put us in the pole position to get onto that list. I'm extremely fortunate to work with a group of amazing people. I myself have a lot of commercial experience scaling medtech ventures from 0 to millions in revenues and exit in PMI. Everybody else has an R&D or a surgery background. We have computer scientists, biomedical engineers, mostly in Zurich, Switzerland. We have Andy Freiberg on the board of directors. He was the chief medical officer for Zimmer Biomet and a professor in AI and computer vision, people who are really, really well versed in our industry. And we have amazing surgeons from really, really well-known institutions as our medical advisors. I'm just, so fortunate to work with all of those folks, and I'm just really amazed by everybody's passion to make this happen, because we do think it's really, the time is right, and the idea is really waiting to come into reality and to scale. Our mission is to define the digital standard care in orthopedic trauma. For those of you that know the space, it's really, really dominated by selling metal, but it's also quite clear that despite the growth, there's just a lot of competition in that space. And we severely believe that this business model is going to be disrupted by a digital player in the next 7 years. And the question really is not whether it's going to be done. The question is who will do it. And we at CustomSurg think we're going to be the ones that make it happen. And with that, I'll stop sharing. I'm super excited for feedback and all your questions.
Great job. I got to kick this off because this is very important what you're putting together here. And you're right. I mean, 100%. Trauma from an AI perspective is greenfield. It's you had up there the OrthoGrid exit to Zimmer Biomet, which I led, and that is direct anterior hip, and they did have a trauma package in the background for intraoperative use. But what I'm seeing here is pretty impressive, Valentine.
Thank you.
There's a few questions I've got that I just wanted to throw at you real quick. If you did the additive revenue expected for 25 and 26, what are you estimating that cumulative?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Estimating revenue for the business through the 26, since we're practically almost to 26.
Yeah. We're doing 5 digits this year, so not, mostly pilots and some first revenues. And then in 26, we're projecting mid 6 figures, and then in 27 we want to hit the 1 million benchmark.
Okay.
It's a great question. We thought about this a lot, and our current hypothesis is that we have to prioritize adoption over revenue generation at our current stage. But we, at the same time, we have to make sure, building price benchmarking and evolving the value proposition.
Great, thank you.
Valentine, quick question, and I don't know, this might be useful in future slide decks, but as a surgeon, the piece that was missing from my perspective was, what does it show the surgeon? Like what is, I know this, I didn't scan the code, but like, the question is like, what do they get? And if it's a stepwise, I mean, I grew up on AO fracture planning, and you had to draw all the pieces and then make them go together. And then if you could get them back together, that's great. But so like my main question is, what kind of work product does it put in front of the surgeons that they find so helpful?
Yeah. So thanks for that question. The product is the smartphone link I shared. And, in the beginning, we thought there's no way people are going to be able to model and manipulate 3D models on a smartphone. And we actually got that FDA cleared without any login or password, just the way we set up and encrypt and submit the links. So surgeons will use this on the go, wherever they are, in the elevator, in the traffic jam, in the coffee break, talking to each other. And what they can do, and I'm happy to share the link with you afterwards, and it's also in the slide. It's in the slide deck, which I hope you will get access to. But basically, it walks them from fragmented to reduced to all the different implant configurations we think are clinically relevant. And you can manipulate that with your fingers, and you can zoom in and turn it around. And you can also get a transparent view, so you really understand plate placement in reference to fragments as well as screw trajectories. Because what we see is that, most manufacturers now have variable angle plates, but surgeons have to somehow, understand a really complex spatial problem in their head with a patient, upside down, and the axis is just a bit moved. Especially younger surgeons, they really struggle, and they take like 250 fluoro per surgeon. And that part is where we really get to 20-30 minutes in time savings per procedure.
Thank you.
Great. Well, quick question. Nice presentation.
Thanks, Kevin.
Obviously a lot there in a very brief amount of time, but I was curious if you could talk a little bit more about your clinical study. I was really interested, kind of what type of patient, what's the output of that study, sort of patient indication, what's the actual output in terms of maybe a marketing claim or other. And then also increasingly important for you at the commercial stages, in that clinical study, are you doing anything around how are you going to actually save money for the hospitals that are ultimately going to buy this? Because my guess is the surgeons are going to be thrilled, but it's the back office, they're going to be a little bit nervous that this is just going to be an additional cost.
Right. And because of the procedures we initially targeted were in the inpatient world, so, not a lot of great opportunities to get the new code or, go that direction.
Right.
Happy to share. So the study I showed you is a case-controlled cadaver study. We procured specimens that were, fractured in a controlled way, and then we did 6 surgeons did the current standard of care, and then after washout period, they did the surgery again with the algorithm. In that study, we then put all the specimens stripped of soft tissue into a biomechanical testing device with things like cyclical loading, low tilt failure, and so on and so forth. In the current first-in-human trial, we are measuring outcome data with I think 3 or 6 month follow-up. We're measuring surgeon satisfaction. We're getting feedback on patient compliance and patient education, but we're also measuring surgical time, implant waste, and a whole lot of kind of secondary parameters that will help us, build that value story for the hospitals that may not be, innovation leaders and may have a harder time, accounting for the cost of the software.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. I had another question too for you, Valentine.
Sure.
The nature of the strategic relationships. So is that like a license on an annual basis to them? And is it being pushed out to their whole sales force for trauma? Just maybe without giving away anything confidential.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So
we're at the beginning of that journey. And we're learning a lot about how different implant manufacturers, about their digital ambitions, but also about how good they are in, actually having digital templates they can share without, keeping 10 engineers busy for a month. So we are looking to stay vendor agnostic for as long as possible, especially when we really prioritize adoption.
Good.
I mean, otherwise we don't enter the contracts that limit us in that sense. So right now, the agreements we have are really research and early traction, early clinical cases. We have not pushed this out to a bigger sales force of an orthopedic implant manufacturer yet. And that's going to be a big fish to fry, but I'm super excited for that phase.
Yeah.
Because what we've seen is that it really transforms the relationship between the sales rep and the surgeon. Those companies spend dozens of millions building new design features that are super clinically valuable, but they have no way to show that in 3D. The surgeon can never touch it unless, once every 3 years they go into a CAD lab. But being able to show that with a specific patient from last week on the phone, and they can zoom in and, flip things around and share it with their friends, that's a new way of selling implants. And so that's what we see the early adopters are super stoked.
That's great. Thank you.
I would just,
and we'll see how this plays out, of course, but is your intention to do this with multiple partners, or are you going to try to obviously become an exclusive or ultimately acquire? How do you sort of see the next 3 years playing out?
That's going to be an interesting needle to thread.
Yeah.
If you're at OTA, I'd love to pick your brain on this. But just in general, I mean, our mission is to redefine the standard of care. If, we see a pathway to scale up ourselves, okay, like game on. But if somebody comes and says, you now treated 8,000 patients, and we're going to got this, get this to like 800,000 or 8 million patients over the next couple of years, I think that will be something we definitely consider.
Great. Really good.
Yeah. Great presentation, Valentine. There's some questions in the chat. We'll keep it moving. We'll go on to our next presentation, but really well done. Thanks for taking a late night.
I appreciate that. Yeah. No, thanks so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. Thanks.
Hey everyone, TJ Halverson here. Did you know that a mediocre hire can cost your MSK company over $1 million? While other recruiters coach candidates to say what you want to hear, we find leaders that actually deliver. The DeAngelis Group has over 25 years of transparent executive search. So de-risk your next hire by contacting us at orthospinesearch.com. Now back to the pitch. All right, with that, we'll move on to our next presentation from John Redman at Steribite. John will pull up the presentation here.
Hi, hello everybody. I appreciate the opportunity to present Steribite. Steribite I'm proud to say, is manufactured here in Ohio. All of our products are 100% manufactured in the United States. So we're proud of that. The company is basically focused on developing sterile, single-use, spinal, and limited-use instruments to replace costly instruments. So my background, I'm founder and CEO of Steribite. I've been in the medical device business for way too long. I've sold a number of companies, actually two to Integra Life Science, surgical instrument companies. So I've been around surgical instruments for a long, long time, and specifically Keras and rongeurs that are used in every spine surgery case done in the world. So we wanted to focus on instruments that were difficult to clean, require expensive maintenance, and are critical to the outcome of operations and are expensive. So if we do that, and we're successful, we help reduce infections and bioburden, improve operating room efficiencies, increase surgeon satisfaction, and in the case of Keras and rongeurs, reduce the risk of dural tears. And I'll talk about that a little bit. As I said, I've been doing this way, way too long, but the importance of this slide is my team has been with me for 20 years. We've sold 3 different companies, so we're not new to this. This is our space. We have a spinal implant company that we developed as well. We were one of the first companies to come out with a standalone cervical plate spacer combination years ago that everybody else copied. We actually won a patent lawsuit against a company. But so we've been doing this a long, long time, and my team is very good at what they do. So for those of you that don't know, Keras and rongeurs is basically a surgical instrument that's used on every spine case, as I said. It's a cutting instrument that's used to remove bone and tissue and ligament. And it's very critical, and it's really frustrating for surgeons. And Paul could maybe address that at some point later. But so they're used on every spine case. And there are over, these numbers, may not be 100% correct, but there are over 2 million spine procedures done in the US. If this market went to a disposable Keras and rongeur, it's $1 billion market opportunity. The disposable surgical instrument market, as most of you probably know, is growing. It's at about 1.5 billion and growing at about a 7% rate. The global spine market, which we piggyback on, is 20 billion and growing at about 7 billion. So that's kind of where our focus is currently, is spine. So let's talk a little bit about what common issues are with Keras and rongeurs. So there's many, many problems. And I think if any of you that are in the spine space, either as a sales rep, a surgeon, or even a scrub tech, if you walk into a surgeon and say, hey, how do you like your Keras and rongeurs? You're not going to hear, oh, I love them. They're great. They're sharp all the time. You're going to hear, I have problems, problems, problems. It's a universal problem that everybody knows about. And it's a big issue in terms of time loss, surgeon frustration, patient safety, and it's just a major problem. So there was one talk that said that there was an increase in dural tear risk of 70% from dull kerasons, from twisting. I don't know if that's true or not, but that was a surgeon at a talk that basically said that that's what he thought it was. Reusable kerasons have screws that can fall out during spine procedures. They come loose, they break off. There's broken tips, bent tips, dirty instruments from improper cleaning, and a lot of unhappy surgeons out there. And just to give you an example, we did a little test. We sent some Keras and rongeurs to a local hospital and said, use these. We're going to pick them up just randomly at some point. So we picked up the first one we picked up. This was packaged sterile, ready to be handed off to the surgeon for the next case. That's the previous patient's bone stuck in there. And Paul, I'm sure you've seen this as other surgeons have all the time. So it's a big problem. And it's kind of a dirty little secret that nobody talks about, but it's a big issue. This is what the repair people see. Sure, that's blood, bone. Is it sterile? Yeah, I guess. But that's what you see when you take these things apart. So their Keras and rongeurs are basically a mess, and they need to be disposable. So other issues, first of all, they're expensive. A reusable Keras and rongeur from Germany can cost anywhere from $800 to $1,500, $1,800. and they can be broken by a surgeon on the first case. You get into hard bone, you twist, and all of a sudden it bends or breaks, and you're at $1,000. So they're expensive, first of all, to buy outright. They have to be repaired. You can't just keep cutting it with them, and they're like a kitchen butcher knife. You have to sharpen them frequently. And that's $25 to $100 every time you do that. And by the way, many times when you sharpen them, they come back and they're useless. The sharpening guy ruined them. So that's an issue. Delaying a procedure is this is probably light, but $60 a minute in the OR. And I can't tell you how many times I've been in cases, and I know other people have, where the surgeon will start the case and all of a sudden this Kerrison's not, it's dull, get me another one. She sits there and folds their arm and twiddles their thumbs while they go find another set that they hope has a better Kerrison. That's lost time. Wound infections, you can't really pin SSIs on a dirty Kerrison specifically, although, they could be suspect. But, this is some data that we got: 1% after simple discectomy, 6 to 8 after fusions with hardware. And everybody knows SSIs are expensive. So you get one and it's, 100,000 per episode. So all of these issues kind of feed into disposable instruments, specifically Kerrisons. So our solution to the problem was to develop a single-use disposable Kerrison. And I want to point out, this is not a cheap, from China or someplace, cheap instrument. The shaft that you see here, the stainless steel shaft, that's 420 stainless, the same as German Kerrisons. It's a 53 Rockwell, the same hardness as a Kerrison. So this is not cheap. This is not a cheap instrument. So it's prepackaged, sterile, single use. We added some features like color coding. You use it once, the surgeon's happy, you throw it away, you're done. So it's really, really where the market needs to go, and it's kind of slowly going there. When we decided to develop this product, we said, what are the problems with existing Kerrisons? And I touched on this a little bit. So first of all, there's screws usually on Kerrisons that become loose. So we eliminated the screw. There's no screw. The spring on a Kerrison has 2 screws and a leaf spring that can catch a surgeon's glove. The screws can break and fall out. So we recessed the spring. So there's no spring. We wanted to make the handle a little bit more comfortable for the surgeon. And we took the spur in the back here. If a surgeon flips it upside down, they don't have that sharp spur sticking in their hand. And we made it a thin foot plate. So it's actually a better product. So with all that said, you would think that this product would be selling in every hospital in the world. But unfortunately, the minute you say that you're going to add $200, $250 to a procedure or $500, the brakes come on. Even though if the hospital would say, what are my costs for processing, for delays, for surgeon frustration, for dural tears, infection, it doesn't matter. So that's been a problem. We're slowly making progress, but slowly doesn't cut it for a startup, as all of you know. So we did about 250,000 last year of this product, which isn't exactly setting the world on fire, but we needed something kind of a gateway drug to get people used to this paradigm shift. And those of you that have been around a while, you remember when Midas Rex first came out, a disposable drill. People were like, you got to be kidding me, a disposable drill bit? And now they're like $100, $150, $200. People would be like, that's insane. I'll never do that. Well, it's standard of care today. Same thing with disposable bipolar forceps. $400 for a bipolar forceps, you're out of your mind. Well, guess what? It's a good, maybe 50% of the market now is disposable. So these things take time, and we think Kerrisons are going to get there. It just takes a little time. So we said, all right, what can we do to help things along? So we came out with kind of a reposable version of this. It's the same features that I mentioned, but this is an aluminum handle. The other is plastic that can't be re-sterilized. So you can basically, we said your cost per use, instead of $250, which is an average of what the disposable single use sells for, if you use this 10 times, and surgeon input is critical on this, when the surgeon says this is getting dull, it's not, it goes to be resharpened, you throw it away and start all over again. If you get 10 uses, that's $40 per use. So now you get the cost way down. And there's like micro scissors for neurosurgery that are limited use to do the same thing. So this is not unheard of, but I call it kind of a gateway drug for the hospitals, where you get it down to a price that they can tolerate. So this one we just introduced, and we're already getting trials. We're already in a couple of big places. This is, we think, gonna really kind of accelerate things. We first pushed the completely disposable because that has all of the benefits, but this is an alternative. So is there competition? There is for the completely disposable, but not really. So the Integra Life Science company that I said bought two of my companies, they took over this Rebellion Kerosene on the left here. It's a German instrument that was developed, and Tedan Surgical, that's been into business for many years, tried to sell it for 2 years and couldn't. First of all, they were charging $700, and if the surgeon uses two of them, that's $1,400. That's a non-starter. Secondly, it functions a little bit differently. The tip is different, and they tended to clog and jam. And thirdly, it's really cool. It collects bone, but it's fiddle factor. Surgeons hate to fiddle. So you got to hook this up. You got to collect the bone. So this was Tedan stopped selling it. So it's really not in any place that I know of. The second one was a good idea on paper. It was a disposable tip with a reusable handle. The problem is the tip is very fiddly. There's micro motion in that tip. Surgeons really hate that. They go to bite and they feel a little micro motion. That's really not good. There's reports of them coming apart during the case. And oh, by the way, you still have to sterilize the handle. And if sterile processing forgets to send it up for the case, you're screwed. So they're really not, these are really not good options. We think ours is the best. There's a single-use cheap Pakistani kerosene that nobody uses. So we're kind of the only game in town for a single-use disposable, we think, and we have the best option. So key milestones, we got FDA approval for this way back in 2018. We got patent issued. Guess when we launched the product? 2020, the first commercial launch. Guess what was going on in 2020? COVID. So none of our sales reps could even get in the hospital for a couple of years to sell this product. So that's kind of why we had the slow start. But at any rate, obviously we got past that. From a manufacturing standpoint, we kind of thought we're going to go to all the different manufacturing possibilities, China, various locations. None of that worked out. We determined that we needed to make this ourselves and control it. So we actually ended up buying the facility that was making our shafts for us here in the US, which was really a smart move on our part. So we control the manufacturing of especially the shafts. And we also make the aluminum handles, and the overmolding is done outside and a couple other steps. We signed an agreement with an international company called MedFix, and they got approval with the Mexican Army, which we're just waiting for Mexican approval, the Mexican government to approve. That's going to be a huge potential for us, somewhere in the neighborhood of $500,000 in sales. As I mentioned, our 2024 sales was about 250. We're going to way surpass that, especially next year. The first clinical trial of the limited use version we just launched. And we also just signed an agreement with Spartan Medical, which is a veteran-owned business that we think is going to do a really good job in government accounts and VA hospitals. So we have a pipeline as well. We're talking to, and there's actually some tests going on with a couple of spinal implant companies to put this in their kits. As some of you know, a lot of companies for an ACDF, for as example, you provide them with the 3 or 4 instruments you need to do the procedure. Well, guess what? Why not provide them with a couple of the other instruments, especially in an ACS, and then you don't need to open a whole bunch of trays and other instruments. So they're looking at putting our disposable version in their kits. We also have a prototype for a disposable pituitary that's used on every case. And we're looking at disposable kerosene for endoscopic surgery as well. So major opportunities for 2025, the Mexico approval, Spartan Medical. Parkview Hospital is a hospital in Fort Wayne, Indiana, that did a test with our product. And they went to a number of different insurance companies and a number of different types of procedures and to see what they could get reimbursement for the completely disposable version. And so they're being very quiet about what they did. But long story short, they got some kind of reimbursement. So they're about to start using this for surgeons, every case. So it's going to be a big account for us. And we obviously were more interested in what they did in terms of the insurance reimbursement. So we're looking forward to getting more information on that. And then obviously the Sharp limited use, we think is going to sell really well. So what are the offering details? We're looking to raise 750, which gets you 7.69 equity at a 9 million valuation. There's approximately 350 remaining. When I signed on for this with Drew a couple of months ago, we just started this. Existing shareholders have kind of jumped in because we made this very attractive. It's 89 cents per unit, and they're preferred units with investment capital return of 150%. So in other words, you get paid out first. If you put in 100, you get 150,000 back. So we're really looking for a strategic investor that could help us on national accounts or distribution. Really not looking for passive investors if we can avoid it. So that's basically where we're at. The use of funds. We want to do direct to customer. We've gone the direct distributor model, which we've had some success, but as most of you know that have been in this business, dealing with distributors can be problematic. We want to get ISO certified. Obviously, we're FDA approved, but if a strategic wants to acquire us, they're going to want to see that ISO certification. We can save a lot of money. Currently, the aluminum handles for the limited use version, we machine those. We can save a lot of money by doing a casting mold. So we want to buy that mold. This product takes about 3 months to make, and you can imagine it's a nightmare from forecasting for your production and your sales. So we want to put a lot more inventory on the shelf just to play it safe, and then general administrative. So that's basically it. So I thank you, appreciate it, and obviously happy to answer any questions.
I'm happy to hop in here, guys. Thanks for. Should you freeze? Yep.
You're not right here. You can't hear you together.
Very good job, John. Good presentation. When you think about the bioburden piece of everything you talked about, screw loosening, things of that nature, I agree. The bioburden piece is a massive problem. I think Paul would probably echo that. I don't know how many times you got handed something, Paul, and it already had something on it that was from a prior case. But I'm sure it happens a lot more than we realize. And the focus, not just in spine, but in other joints as well, around PJI, right? Perioperative joint infection. You doing a lot of research there to build that case more, because I think you might be leaving a little bit of the story on the table that needs to be elevated.
Yeah, Chris, I agree with you. It's really hard to pinpoint where your bioburden comes from or where your infection comes from. I mean, we suspect that that's an issue. And even, Paul, maybe you can jump in here, but even if you don't get an infection, it might cause inflammation. The previous patient's tissue could cause inflammation. We don't know. It's just really, it's a tough one to pinpoint, but I agree with you, Chris. It's a big problem.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'll weigh in. I know, Kevin, you froze, so we jumped in your gap there. Yeah, I mean, yes, the slide that you show, we've seen, intraoperatively, and you're stuck, right? I mean, it is sterile theoretically, so it's a little bit of a collision. But I'd kind of like to pick at this a little bit. Like I know how hard this is. You've got a case that you're making very elegantly about the reason from a CFO perspective. Modestly, I think from the surgeons are, they just think that they'll just buy a new kerosene. We often have like layers of kerosenes, on the shelf, more than we probably think. We think there's more there. But whenever there's like, trying to convince surgeons to change and take something that's like less than like you're basically saying, I know you're used to driving this German instrument. We're going to give you this one that looks a little different, feels a little different. There's always a challenge, but from a, I guess from a business model, I'm trying to still get my head around whether you're really building a unique business model versus a technology, right? Anybody, quote unquote, who builds kerosenes could say, we can build a disposable one. But I'm curious, like, where would this go to roost if somebody who is an institutional investor is like, where does this company land? It's hard for me to see where this would go other than building a company to sustain itself.
So from our perspective, we think this is a bolt-on acquisition for a company, especially a spine implant company. So I was in on a case the other day, and it was a Globus case, and I'm trying to sell my disposable kerosene, and there's a whole set of kerosenes that was provided by Globus to the hospital. So it's like, well, this is not good for me. But imagine if you're Globus or any of the other large companies, and you gotta bring all of these in. Wouldn't it be a lot easier and cheaper if you were just to bring one of ours in? Probably. So we think an acquisition by a Medtronic or anybody for that matter, this product fits. But to answer your question, kind of where we think we're going, our next step is, quite frankly, we think it's going to kits, especially in surgery centers. So we want to work on. I'm gathering information right now on what an ACDF set would entail: a couple of curettes, a pituitary, a kerosene, and provide a surgery center with a complete kit, including ours. So our expertise is basically in figuring out how to make instruments high quality, which is the most critical thing, because you touched on surgeons hate things that are different and don't function as well, but inexpensive enough to make them.
I'll offer just one quick number one. There's other people heading into that space are well into it,
Sure.
So be careful how late to that party you are. And number two, specific to surgery centers, and I'll kick it back over to Kevin. Surgery centers sometimes will say, hey, you need to come collect all these things. We're not throwing them away. They get charged to throw stuff away. So I've seen some of these things hit a brick wall where it's a disposable, but the surgery center's like, hey, you need to recycle this, or you need to come collect this, entity as part of this. So anyway, I'll kick it over to Kevin in case he got that.
Hey, Kevin, we do need to actually keep it moving, get on to David's presentation here. If you want to drop that question maybe in the chat for John, that way we can let David move on to the next presentation. Thanks so much, John.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
But with that, let's move on to GID Bio here with David Springer.
Thanks for having me, TJ. It's a pleasure to serve as a panelist in the past, and so I look forward to the feedback with GID Bio. So I'm the executive chair of GID Bio, and we are a cell company to treat your own degenerative disease. And we're focused on osteoarthritis in the knee. We do 4 really unique and special things. We're a disposable medical device. Number 2, we harvest, filter, separate, and concentrate the stromal vascular cells from the adipose tissue, so from fat. We take less than 30 cc's, 2 fingers of that. And from that, we're able to quickly produce over 25 million of these healing cells and able to inject those back into the patient's own knee in less than 3 hours outpatient. Why osteoarthritis? As all of you in orthopedics know, it's a big, big problem. There aren't a lot of effective solutions until you get to a total joint, and lots of money is spent on this. In fact, in the US, 15 million people a year have osteoarthritis of the knee. We are focused on a segment here, 2 million people a year. In our FDA pivotal trial I'm going to share with you, we treated moderate to severe patients, which is unique. Over 60% of the patients we treated were severe. In addition, those patients had to fail 2 of HA, PRP, and steroid injection before they could be allowed into the trial. And so you can see big market before you get to the total joint solution. So this is a little bit more detailed of what we do, but we are stromal vascular fraction cells. And so we isolate and retain those from the adipose tissue. So we do not inject back fat or any chemicals or drugs or any of the other inflammatory cells. We remove those inflammatory cells so that we can just provide the healing cells to the site of treatment. Again, we do this in less than an hour in an outpatient setting of the processing the cells. The steps, you walk into an outpatient surgery center or doctor's office, and in less than 3 hours, they're walking out with an injection of their own healing cells, over 25 million. So we just completed a phase 3 FDA pivotal trial where at 1 year we had statistical significance and superiority, first ever, where we showed 73% reduction in pain and actually 115% improvement in function. So we just got new numbers from the data, so actually improved when the analysis was done, and it was a 0.015 p-value. So very compelling against a difficult placebo control. This is the graphs of it. Again, you can see as those of you in orthopedics, if you talk to an orthopedic surgeon, they will tell you you can inject saline into somebody's knee and they're going to feel good for 3 to 6 months and think they had an effect. So there's a lot of things that are being injected. People think it works, so you can see it works, and then the placebo effect goes away, where our cells, 50% improvement and then improved out to a year in both pain and function. And in our phase 2A data, we had consistency. So lots of data. The company spent a lot of money and time to get science and a PMA approval. So different than the 510K solutions on the market, really spent the time and money and energy to show a difference and get this data. You can see the phase 1 and phase 2 data, which has already been published. The additional compelling, 0 device-related adverse events. So this is a safe therapy and no different than injecting anything into a knee. This is the complex based on time. I'm going to catch up, but suffice it to say, a very stringent, double-blind, randomized trial against placebo. I'm going to show you this slide, not to show you the other disease states we've studied, but to show you the mechanism of an action. Since you can't see what's going on in the knee, with diabetic ulcers, these are on the heel, as you know, they never heal. They never are able to be treated. Normally, patients get amputated. All 75 patients that in this trial were facing amputation. By injecting the exact same stromal vascular cells at the same dose that we're doing it to the knee, at 6 months had total healing. So that's really what's going on. You can see it visually versus what the magic is going on inside the knee. As you know, to commercialize, you have to really have something that's safe, effective, easy to use, and compelling with low surgical complications for a patient, and we meet all those benchmarks. What's also compelling is we have CMS coverage already, and we are working with CMS since there aren't any other codes in orthopedics similar. We're working with them on defining the amount, but our consultants believe with the cost and the time, it'll be $14,000. Again, versus the total joint, you can see when you look at the value and the benefit of this outpatient procedure versus the cost of injections. More than injections, but a lot less than total knee. Just anecdotally, patients in our 2A trial are out over 10 years, and a number of them have told us they were told they needed total joints in both knees. They had pain in both, and they've been pain-free for over 10 years. And we are doing a follow-up study out to 3 years on the patients treated to show that these patients did not require a total joint and they remain pain-free. I went through the reimbursement, so I'm not going to bore with the details. We also have very strong IP, freedom to operate, 15 issued patents in the apparatus and in the methods. Again, how we process in an outpatient setting and how we dose is different than all the stuff you hear. And by the way, I want to point out, we are not stem cells. We are stromal vascular fraction cells, and that is from your own cells. So they're autologous. They're your own cells, and we put them back. So we're not culturing, modifying, or anything like that. It's taking them, harvesting them, keeping them fresh, separate them, and then injecting back those quality healing cells. Our commercial plan is really compelling. Just to let you know, year one, with just 18 doctors doing 10 a month, we'll have 5.4 million in revenue. Every orthopedic surgeon I've talked to from my previous life has told me we're too conservative on our numbers, because more doctors than 18 will want to do this, and they'll do more than 10 a month. So we'll be cash flow positive on approval. So we believe we should have PMA approval and launch in early 27. If we have to do a few more patients for safety, because we're in the CBER arm of the FDA, then it'll be early 28. I'm going to show you the opportunity. This is a great opportunity for any investors. We are topping off a convertible note with really strong terms, 20% discount, a cap on the valuation, and 6% interest. And this would get us through the long-term follow-up on the patients out to 3 years, clarity on the reimbursement amount, as well as the pathway for our PMA submission. So in summary, in addition to the incredible safety and clinical benefits and the cost benefits to the healthcare system, we've really de-risked this investment opportunity from an FDA pathway standpoint with compelling statistically significant data, from IP, and also from reimbursement. Thank you very much.
Great presentation.
Excellent.
Great job, Dave. Guys, I'll
Where
hop
you-
in if that's okay. If
Where you been hiding, man?
What was that?
Have you been hiding? I'm telling you, this is really interesting. But go ahead, Kev.
So, yeah, thank you. So, Dave, my perception on knee OA and injections, obviously, if there is a positive value proposition, anything you can do to delay a total knee or a uni or something has a great value proposition. There's tons of patients in pain that don't want to go through with it, who would love to do an injection. At the same time, there's a tremendous amount of stuff you can inject into the knee, from steroids to viscosupplements to biologics, PRP, BMAC, et cetera. No offense to you. I don't mean any offense to this, but I had never heard of this before. So how are you going to convince the market that this biologic cocktail is actually, the magic biologic cocktail with your preparation, and it's superior to any of these other injections? And to me, it seems like that's the, $500 million question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great question. And I agree with you. So there's a lot of noise out there and a lot of solutions. But first, if you talk to orthopedic surgeons, I'll tell you steroids they're causing harm. And they know they're causing harm. And the more they do it, they're just accelerating the path to a total joint. Second, people that get total knees, 29% are dissatisfied. And there's a lot of complications that go with it. But more importantly, Kevin, I guess I'd ask all of you, if you're marketing a product and you take it to your patient and say, I got all these bundles of injections I can give you, but I don't have any data. But this company has science against a randomized sham control that shows this amount of pain reduction and functional improvement at a year, okay, versus sham, and they're reimbursed and covered, versus this other magic you're going to have to pay out of pocket for because it's not reimbursed and covered. You tell me what the market's going to select. So you have to have compelling reimbursement with compelling data. And that's what GID Bio spent the time and money to be different. They had a 510K product. They have other people doing processing on their 510K, but they went and did the stringent work and expense to get a PMA study to get the indication that says they reduce pain. Other people are off-label marketing. So they're selling magic and potions. So that's really the advantage. And the key thing is getting the reimbursement, because as you know, if there's compelling reimbursement, then people will do it.
And quick, I completely agree with your answer. Quick follow-up, is that data published, in a major journal or not yet, or what's your intention there? Because I feel like that, that's you're hanging your whole hat on that study.
Yeah, well, no, the phase 1 and 2 were published. Phase 2 was published in AJSM, and we are submitting to phase 3 for publication as we speak. Yes, you're right. Yes, the publication
Thank
data
you.
will be very important. And I would tell you, our founders are leaders in this field and have published numerous studies on the value of SVF versus quote fat or other things. So they're out in front of this.
If you would, David, that's a great presentation, and I echo Kevin's comments. They were in line with mine. There's just ingrained PRP mills in these, with or without proof. It quote unquote doesn't matter. They're in there, and they've got the machines in there. They've got the whole workflow. But that being said, in terms of your PMA study, will you have to, the word healing, just as a surgeon, I'd be just a little cautious about being so overt with that with medical providers, just as free information, because healing to me is being defined by imaging showing resolution of the underlying entity, not symptomatic resolution. But that being said, will the FDA require you to do any objective test if it's just function and outcome from a pain reduction function? Understood. But are you going for the holy grail and trying to show some resolution of something? I suspect not at those numbers. You'd have to run a pretty expensive study, but I'm curious about your response.
Well, we did, the study does, I didn't go through it, but it did have extensive imaging as well as lab work on it as well. But to your point, as you know, MRI doesn't, cartilage does not remodel. It's not vascular. So what we're doing is we're affecting the vasculature, the ligaments, and the synovial fluid. And so providing that, again, using, just trying to describe it, that what we're doing, we're not remodeling or reconstructing, we're providing we're reducing inflammation. And that's why the pain. So a lot of orthopedic surgeons I've talked to from my previous life are saying, we're going to use this on meniscal repairs, because how many people, had their meniscus repaired, shaved, whatever, and they're still in pain. So the repair didn't fix the pain. It repaired whatever was loose, but they're still in pain. So that we're going to be injecting this in there all day.
When was the company founded, David?
Yeah, it's over 12 years old. So they've done a tremendous amount of work and time to get here. Yes.
Will it require? So here's the reason I'm asking this: is that NeoA big time? Is the surgical technique as far as injection the same as it is for HA, or is there something more specific about it?
In the study, we used also ultrasound guided just to make sure we were inside the right place in the capsule. But it is similar injection into the space. Correct.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And the last thing, real quick, what's the product name?
It's called SVF2.
Okay. Sort of like BMP2.
I don't know if that's the best name, but it works. It does a complex.
I sold a lot.
System in a short time outpatient.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, with my time at Medtronic working in the biologic division, there's something seriously here, and it makes me think about the increasing rate of the number of people in the hip care continuum that are having OA earlier and earlier, and there's nothing except go straight to a total. From a clinical study standpoint and FDA process, is that a whole nother phase 1, 2, 3 study?
That's a good question. We're focused on OA and the knee to get the data. Obviously, doctors can do what they want with a approved indication, but our focus there first, and then we can do any follow-on to show it. I've heard from doctors that hip transplants are actually more effective than knee. So interesting. You point out that, there could be a use there as well.
There is a use, and they're getting younger and younger.
And again, I want to go back. remember our trial, we took the patients that already had steroids and already had PRP at HA.
Right.
There's still 2 million of those a year. So we can really do well by doing good, do good, do well by doing good, because there's just so many that try these other things and they
Yeah.
may or may not have worked, and now they are still in pain and they don't want to go to a total. So, and it's cost effective.
That's great.
If I could, I know we're on borrowed time here, Dave. You're raising $15 million, $40 million cap to do the phase 3, the end of the phase 3. Does the $15 million? You're right. Tell me, when do you actually launch this product, and just walk me through that.
Yeah. So 13.5 million has already been raised in that note. There's one and a
Got
half
it.
million left.
Yep.
As a way to get further clarity and extend the runway and get valuation enhancement, take an additional 1.5, which will help us. It may get us through PMA,
Okay.
depending on what the pathway is with the FDA. So the smarter thing is to take that. There's a discount. So the new investors, what's so appealing, the investors that funded the 3A got these same terms a few years
Yeah.
ago. Okay. So what's compelling, so I'm telling, if I'm telling my friends and family, I'd invest in this, because you're not going to get into the institutional round for the commercialization, because it's going to be a venture or some other firm like that. So this is a compelling way to get in with a discount at terms that were when we didn't know this data.
Sure. And so you think that this will get you there, and then your next round is a commercial round, most likely.
Correct. And so
Okay.
it can take a lot less to get there. Could do a 5 million to 10 million.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you.
Great. All right, guys. Well, thanks again, Dave. That was a great presentation. And thanks to Chris and Paul Slozar and Kevin Rocco, everyone, for joining us tonight. Great event. Please reach out to the presenters if you have any additional questions, or to myself or Drew at MSK Innovations. Look forward to our next event. It's going to be on November 12th. So keep your inbox open for that invite. We are excited to see you all and hope you have a great rest of the evening. Thanks for joining us again.